Hey there everybody, as some of you or probably most of you may have heard, our beloved Stan Lee passed away earlier this week on Monday, September 12th, 2018. He passed away, I believe, of pneumonia in Los Angeles, California. He will be sorely missed. I wanted to take a moment to talk a little bit about his life from when he was born to now, and highlight some of his ups and downs, his friendships and his fallouts, his success stories, and some of his controversies, hopefully in under 5 minutes. Stan Lee was born in 1922. The famous Stan Lee we all know and love was actually born Stanley Martin Lieber. He used his first name and divided it into Stan Lee in order to protect his identity, because when he began writing comic books, it was not necessarily a very respected profession, and so he wanted to keep himself a little bit under the radar. In 1939, Stan Lee began working at Timely Comic for one of his relatives who owned the company. He began mostly as an intern, sort of filling inkwells, fetching sandwiches for the boys. Every now and again, he would get the opportunity to throw his 2 cents in and publish a little bit of his own creative genius. Shortly thereafter, he was recruited for the military during World War II in 1942. And while he may not have been in the line of fire, he was supporting the troops by illustrating posters for recruitment and to get people to donate and to buy coupons. I think they're called coupons?
Nope.
Cut to 1961, Stan Lee has the opportunity to create and publish his first comic book series, and it takes life as the Fantastic Four. This series hoped to compete with DC, who was killing it at this time, with Batman, Superman, the Justice League, and so many more. The Fantastic Four did incredibly, as well as Stan Lee's later creations, Spider-Man, X-Men, and so on. And this success was due in part to the fact that these characters were more relatable than DC. These characters had rent due, and they had girlfriend problems, and they had existential crises that the public could relate to, that the consumer could relate to, and so Marvel Comics took off. In 1972, Stan Lee became the editorial director and publisher of Marvel Comics after 30 years of writing nearly every day, as stated by him. Yeah, I believe that. Skip to 1980 and Lee moves to LA, the city of angels, in hopes of taking his comic book creations and putting them on the big screen. This was a very slow start. It took him a very long time. The first decade was nothing. And then in 1989, Jack Kirby, who was one of the illustrators at Marvel Comics, who then left to DC Comics because he's a traitor, did an interview with Comic Journal. He claims that he was the sole creator of the Fantastic Four and Stan Lee had nothing to do with this. This, of course, was a grave accusation, to which Stan Lee denied and claimed a creative process between him and all the illustrators. Stan Lee claims that he would orate the stories, his ideas, and the illustrators would get to work with what he had conveyed, and then it would all come together into the masterpiece that was the Marvel comic book universe. Moved to the 1990s, and we're still doing very poorly in transitioning to the big screen. In 1990, an adaptation of Captain America goes straight to video, no box office, no nothing. In 1994, a low-budget version of the Fantastic Four gets shelved, but enter the new millennia. Tom Singer's X-Men kills it, with Wolverine played by Hugh Jackman, Storm played by Halle Berry, and this was one of my favorites. This paved the road for success for what we know as the Marvel Cinematic Universe now. In 2002, Lee hit some bumps in the roads as he sues Marvel for an unknown to me amount, but he settles for a 7-figure amount and is given the title Chairman Emeritus. Am I saying that right? Emeritus? Of Marvel Enterprises. This year is also when Stan Lee's autobiography is published, Excelsior. I don't know if I'm saying that right either. Let's move a little bit forward to 2009. The Walt Disney Company purchases Marvel Enterprises. This adds a whole new level of resources and budgets to the movies to come. In 2017, Stan Lee faces difficulties as his wife of 69 years, Joanne, dies at age 93, I believe. A little while later, he sues his former company, POW, for a whopping $2 billion. 2 months later, he drops those charges and says that this was a very confusing time for everybody. We can see that Stan Lee is in a very turmoiled place at this moment. Later on in the year, he files a restraining order against his former business manager, Kay Morgan, who his attorney accuses of taking advantage of Lee's age to influence and control him. But let's not end on a sour note. In the time that the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been giving us these awesome superhero movies, they've made a whopping $17.6 billion at the box office. Stan Lee in this past year alone cameoed in 5 of these Marvel movies. So I think it just goes to show what type of person Stan Lee truly was. He was a creator, he was an illustrator, he loved what he did, and I think I speak for my generation, the generation preceding me, and the ones that will follow when I say thank you, Stan Lee.